Thank you, Gerald. I tell you what, I've known him and Gary for over 40 years, and they have wonderful hearts for the Lord. And I hope if you think about Gary this today and this week, 2.5 years Jill will be gone to the mission field, and he won't get to see her a whole lot. And that would be hard for any of us, and maybe you've experienced that. So please pray for Gary and Kay as they're going through that. And I do want to thank you for having me back. I know none of you got to vote for that, but Gary asking me back is like, okay, he must not have got enough negative information that he said he could go ahead and let me come back. So I'm excited about that. So being back is fun. I'll get this out of the way. A lot of you asked what happened, and I would love to say it was just rotator cuff or something like this, but actually, Black Friday sale. I was at Kohl's. I knew what I wanted to get. It was a sweater. I started going for it, and all of a sudden, I got blindsided by none other than Kay Day. She knocked me down. She knocked me down and stepped on me, walked past me, got the sweater. I acted like I wasn't hurt, but I was. Okay. I'll get that out of the way. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Earphones. Yeah, earphones. Yeah, okay. Actually, the truth is, I had this done 2 years ago, and this one, and one of my very good friends, Jerry Cooper at FWO, did this, and I've known him for over close to 50 years as we went to high school together. And he looked at it through an MRI, and when he actually got in there, he ended up, there was a band going from my bicep to my shoulder that was torn. He cut it, pinned it to my shoulder, cleaned up my rotator cuff, and then cut my clavicle because there's tendon and bone hanging. And I said, okay, Jerry, level with me. What really caused all this? And he says, it's a serious diagnosis, Mick. And I go, okay. He goes, you're old. And I said, okay, thanks a lot, Gary. Really appreciate your love and care on that. But yeah. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about, I'd like to keep things simple. And I know as I listened to Gerald's prayer, thinking about where I was a year ago and where I am now, some of you might go, I am in the exact same place. That might be good, but you also could be stuck. So if I'm stuck, how do I get unstuck? Now, I want you to even go, when's the last, now some of you are probably so good at drivers, you've never ever been stuck in snow, mud, or anything. But let's think about the last time you were stuck. And I know I've been out to Bill Holly's little play field out there. I'm sure all his toys get stuck a lot, but you know, we have been stuck. So getting stuck, one of those things when you get in and say you went into a drift and all of a sudden you go, okay, I am stuck. What do most of us do? Just spin those tires like crazy. Doesn't it help? No. We just keep spinning and spinning, and somehow it's going to catch traction. And then we get down to it where it's so low we can't really do anything, but I'm telling you what, we spun those wheels. And we're stuck. We're frustrated. We're angry. I love the pictures. Those were Gerald's. I looked at those for a while and just giggled myself because I thought, okay, I won't even go into how those might have happened. But, you know, a lot of different emotions come into play when we are physically stuck. But I totally believe that we get stuck in other areas of life. So as you look at that and as you're stuck and trying to figure out what the other areas of life are, I want to share with you that the Lord points those out. Now, we can do this. We can ignore that there's 4 different areas of life. Some people think 5, maybe even 6. We could just think, no, there's just existing. No, there are. And they are different. So we have this mental or emotional capacity of an area of our lives. We have this relational or social. We have physical. And we have spiritual. Now, if you look at those 4, the mental, emotional, the social, the physical, the spiritual, which one are you most stuck in? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call on you and ask you which one it is. No, I won't do that. If I called on anybody, it'd be my brother Steve, and he would not like that. And by the way, I love my brother. I'm so proud of him. That's just what you want to say. Okay, don't cry. Okay, all right. So But when you think of that, really do an assessment of yourself. We don't often do that. Oftentimes we just rather go through life, try to find a way to be comfortable. But when's the last time you really explored, how am I doing in these other areas of life? Am I just sitting by, waiting to see what happens, stuck, spinning my wheels, frustrated? Or am I trying to look at different things? So what I want to do is I want to look at a passage where the Lord shares with us exactly these areas of life, because it pertained to him. Luke 2:52. Jesus grew in wisdom, mental, emotional, and stature, grew in wisdom and stature, that's physically, and in favor with God, that's spiritually, and with man, that's relationally and socially. Jesus did that. He realized that there's areas of life. Now, it doesn't help us at all, and I can go through seasons of life where I want to ignore one of them. At one point in my life, I weighed 280 plus, and I was just ignoring how I was doing physically because I was doing youth ministry, and you ate so much pizza and took them out for so much ice cream, and I just let it pile on. But that wasn't good for me, and just to stay there would have affected me for the long haul. But 60 pounds lighter, and I realized that I'm glad I didn't stay in that same place. Have you ever been in a place where you kind of went, okay, our marriage was here, and it was maybe here for a long time, and we were stuck, but it's moved? What causes it to move? Sometimes it's up to us to decide that I want to be about a little bit of a change. I want to become unstuck. When I break down those parts of the area of life, we can have issues with all of them, as we've said. So, what causes us to be stuck? The one that I think sometimes I hate hearing, even if we're not using these words, is, I'm set in my ways. I've done it this way for a long time, and I haven't hurt anybody. Maybe you haven't gone anyplace, but it's just, I'm set in my ways. It's easy for that to happen. Maybe there was a role modeling of your parents. They did it this way, so I'm going to do it this way. Or another role model, maybe a sibling that set things up in certain ways. And you know what's sad is, and I've seen it and so have you, sometimes sometimes people that I know well just get comfortable with being stuck. It's what I know. I've been here. I've been here before. I'm comfortable with it. And sometimes we become so comfortable, we don't even realize we're stuck. And we're unable to move. Some of it's just poor decision making or a lack of faith. In those 4 areas of life, where are you stuck? And what happens when we're stuck? Have you ever gotten to the place where you so badly, so desperately want to be unstuck? You want to see movement in your life. But we are unwilling to do anything about it. I've been there. In probably every area at some point. So we know it's the truth. I don't think any of us can sit here and go, okay, Mick, have a raise of hands of somebody who's never been stuck in one of these areas of life. If you raise your hand, go ahead and leave now, because you'll be wasting your time with what I have to share with you. And the fact is, we all have had places and times where we've been stuck. And as desperately as we want to have a change, I want you to know something today that we need to find hope and encouragement from. God wants you to change more than you do. He wants you to take those next steps. He wants movement in your life. And yes, I believe movement spiritually helps all 4. But sometimes I've got to get out of a funk mentally before I can do something spiritually or physically. Or sometimes I need to realize I can't just live my life as saying, I'm just shy. I only have 4 friends. Or 2 friends. And say, I need to break from that. I need to go ahead and explore a little bit, take a risk that I might need to gain some other friendships, other people around me that could speak into my life. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And if we do that, I love this passage from 1 Peter 1:13 through 16. it says this, and I read it from the Message because sometimes I like it straightforward. It says this, so roll up your sleeves, get your head in the game. Be totally ready to receive the gift that's coming when Jesus arrives. Don't lazily slip back into those old grooves of evil, basically getting stuck, doing just what you feel like doing, and you didn't know any better than what you know. As obedient children, let yourselves be pulled into a way that is life-shaped by God's life, and life energetic and blazing in holiness. God said, I am holy, you be holy. Now, some of us don't like, you've probably heard it before, but we're supposed to be Christ-like. And I hope maybe throughout a day or throughout a week or a month, hopefully not just in once in a year, that you would see yourself trying to be Christ-like, doing the things he would want you to do, caring about others, helping out at the church, giving, doing all those things. And if we say that is true for us, I believe in my whole heart, even though we may never totally be like Christ, there's lots of things in our life that can become like that. We can become holy because he asked us to do that. And in doing that, we find a way to really make some strides. So I want to ask you this too. And maybe in your mind, you can put up your hand. Are you at the age or the place in your life where you're done taking challenges? And if you are, I want to challenge you that that's not a good place to be. I think it's good for us at any age to go ahead and say, if the Lord has a challenge for me, I want to try to look into it. I want to try to be involved in that. And in doing that, I believe that the Lord will have things for us that we never expected because we took challenges. And one of my favorite, I think I may have even read it last time I was here, was James 22 through 25. And it's my favorite because I think there's places of humor in the Bible, and I think this is one of them. It says this, do not merely listen to the word. Have you ever found yourself just merely listening to the word, not really hearing what it says? And so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Now that's a way that we can keep bearing fruit, is when we listen and do what it says. But if we don't, we're stuck. Anyone who listens to the word and does not do what it says is like someone that looks at his face in the mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. I doubt that has ever happened, that you got in your car today and you looked in your rearview mirror and you went, no, you knew what you looked like, or you saw yourself in the mirror this morning and you might go, I wish I didn't look like that, but yes, that is you. That is often the same with God's word. We've heard God's word. We've just never really let it sit in and know it like we know ourselves. So in that, again, but whoever looks intently into the perfect law, God's truth, that gives freedom and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard, but doing it, they'll be blessed in what they do. What I want to do now, and I got a little bit of, some ribbing by, maybe a greeter or two, that usually Gary hands out a half sheet. Okay, well, I handed out a whole sheet, and I hope you got that, okay? And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to give you some practical ideas. Now, these aren't all mine. These are what I get to do in my ministry, and I'll tell you real quick what that is. It's called The Edge. Good friend of mine down in Auburn, Alabama, started this. We're the second city to have it now. I think there's about 10 more getting ready to start. And it's a ministry kind of geared after something that Billy Graham said. Now, I was involved in Youth for Christ, and Billy Graham was the first ever Youth for Christ worker, so we're pretty fond of Billy Graham. I think he's a pretty outstanding man. But when he said, a short time before he died, he believed that the next great spiritual awakening was going to happen in the marketplace, in the workplace, in our communities. Now, realizing that, and I get involved and I got excited about this ministry. It's gone on for a year now. I have now met with over 800 people one-on-one. And I kind of ask them these questions. I kind of ask them, tell me your story. I hear their story. If I don't hear anything about faith, I usually know them well enough because these aren't brand new sit-downs. I'll sit down and say, tell me a little bit about your spiritual story. And they'll tell me that. And then I'll say, and I love this question, I would like for you to think about it. When's the last time you were at a spiritual peak? You were so excited about your faith that you just go, man, was it when you came to Christ? Was it at a retreat? Was it one of Gary's sermons? When was it? Was it when a passing of one of your relatives that you got to really hear what they were about? What was it? When was it that you really were at a peak? And what I get to go around is doing small groups and a lot of individual appointments, and I meet with people and I say, okay, how do we move that ball down the field? Now, I love football, so I use a lot of football illustrations, but again, I've seen teams, I saw teams yesterday as I watched some TV, they were stuck. Not a lot of offense, not a lot of movement. And if we want to move the ball down the field, we have to take on some challenges and start some movement. So what I did for last year, and I'm giving them to you because I don't think any of you have seen them except for Steve, I think. I don't think the rest of you are on my mailing list, but if you would like to be, I did put that in the first monthly challenge. There's my email. If this is something you would like to get, I send one out monthly, or if you would like to meet with me after we go through all this, you might go, nah, I don't want to meet with you. But if you'd like to meet with me, I would love that. Bill, quit shaking your head. Yes, I saw that. Very obvious, okay. The first one is this. When we started this out, we said, okay, let's just give it a little bit. And knowing that if I gave a challenge a month for 12 months, how many people would really take them? Well, you'd have to be in a place, in a setting where you're going, I want to take that challenge. Now, these happen to be all spiritual challenges, some relational, but a lot of them have to do with where you are in your spiritual walk. So, the first one is in the month of January last year, and if you didn't get this, now maybe you want to start this year, is reading a proverb a day. Not hard. It really doesn't take very long at all. So I started doing this with Kevin when he started The Edge 5 years ago. He said, hey, Mick, I'm starting this ministry. Would you want to do this with me? I said, sure. So I started reading a proverb a day. There's 31, so in a couple months, you double up on the last day of the month. But what do they say about the book of Proverbs? It's about wisdom. I would guess every one of us is not going, I don't need one more ounce of wisdom. I am the wisest person I know. Maybe you are. I mean, you very well could be very wise, but it doesn't hurt us to get a little wiser. And there is such good things there. And then Kevin writes a little devotional for each day that he sends out in something called the Daily Edge, and you can get that if you would want. The Edge Daily, sorry. The next, in February, it was looking at this idea of having a life mission statement. It was so funny. Out of 800 people I met with, over 600 couldn't state the mission of the place they worked. Now, some of you are shaking your head. I mean, I met with some owners, and they couldn't remember. They said, we did it back when we started this. And I said, well, if you have that mission statement and you don't know it, nobody else does, why do you have it? So I said, you can work on that later. And it was nice. I met with Jerry Cooper and told him about this, and he had me come and meet with all the doctors at FWO because he said it's so easy with the way insurance is and everything else to get off mission. So what I talked about with this, come up with your own personal mission statement. Because what I find is the best people, the best employees, the best folks out there, they run their stuff through a grid, whether it's something they can verbalize or not. But a lot of them can. They will verbalize their mission statement. I wrote mine when I was 22 years old, when I started Youth for Christ. Didn't care for that as much as when I had my transition to the Edge, so I created a new one. And my new mission statement is this: there's nothing more important than who I am in the Lord and those I can influence for his kingdom. That's my mission statement. So when I go in to every appointment, every decision I'm making financially, I run it through that grid. That just helps me. I'm not saying it's the best mission statement in the world, but what's yours? Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about creating a family value statement or mission statement? At my age, I loved sending an email, actually a text to my kids, and I said, folks, and I have 4 kids, your mom and I, we would like to come up with the Baker family values. And I'd like for you to help. Told them why, told them how important it is to have something that you kind of have your family focused on, especially the young ones. And right away one of them says, Dad, are you dying? And I said, no. No, not yet, but I probably will someday. And we started to develop that. What helped me get there was a good friend of mine when I met with last February. I asked him that question. And he said, well, Mick, I asked him what his company mission statement was. And he says, my company mission statement, my family value statement, and my personal mission statement are all the same. Oh, that was so good. So good. So I went home, beat myself up. So I go, okay, I got to try to come up with that. So anyhow, my family came up with these. We love God. We want to serve others. We want to spread joy, share hope, pray continually. I said, I love it, guys. I love it. We tweaked it, and that's what we came up with. Some of them are treating it real serious, some not as much. My oldest has kids that are older. And he said, Dad, do you care if we do our own? And I said, absolutely not. That would be an honor. Do your own. Well, they did love God. That's a good place to start. They love serving others, so they did that. So that was the 11-year-old was serving others. The 7-year-old was, let's love God. And the 4-year-old, they said, Boston, what do you want to be on our family value statement? He goes, what do we do the best? And he goes, have fun. So that's their third one. But that's great. Love God, serve others, have fun. I love it. But that's an idea of a mission statement. That's the idea of having something that is so purposeful that you run your life through. In March, we went through this idea of praying for other people. I love that. I wish I would say I've done it my whole life. I haven't. But in this last year, I started and actually made this change in transition of jobs before I even started in the Edge, that every time I'm going to meet with people that I have on my calendar, that morning, I pray for them on a timer for 3 minutes. You may think 3 minutes isn't very long. Sometimes it's the longest 3 minutes. No, it's really good. So I pray for them for 3 minutes. And then when I see them, it's like, this isn't my first time being with you. I've already raised you up before the Lord. I've lifted you before the Lord, and I am so glad that I'll see you. And it's so much fun to be in a meeting that you've already prayed for them for 3 minutes. So I do that if I have 4 or 5 for that day. Then I always pray for the unexpected appointment. And it seems like they happen all the time. Those opportunities that the Lord puts before us to meet or talk to some other folks. So I love that opportunity. So that would be March. And in April was something, again, I tried in transition. I had listened to sports talk radio most of my life. I love listening, and I realized I'm hearing the same scores, the same interviews and everything several times a day. So what I did is I said, okay, I'm going to turn it to my radio station, which was 88.3, and I'm never going to touch the dial again. And I haven't touched it since a year ago this past September. I have not touched it. Okay, so now that's a year and 3 months of only listening to Christian radio. I told Melissa, we're friends. We have different groups we're involved in. So Melissa Montana, I was telling her, Melissa, I'm just going to tell you this, and I'm not kissing up. It's changed my life. When I'm mowing, songs are going through my head, and it's changing my life. And I listened to the song, Seth Schluter, I think is his name, saying, if I could count my blessings, one of the phrases, if I could count my blessings, I couldn't count that high. What makes me love that song more than anything is I have been on this pointed journey, voyage that I have set for myself, that with all the negative noise out there, I just want to share how blessed we are. And I hope you would look at me and you would all shake your heads and go, yeah, we're going through some stuff, but we're blessed. We're blessed. We've got family. We've got friends. We've got a home. We're blessed. And if we have that attitude, that changes a lot of things. And that has to do with our prayer time. So that would be April. And in May was a time that I love this idea. Youth for Christ told me when I first started that in every quarter that we're working, we're supposed to take a day, take our Bible, and go someplace without our phone. And just, Lord, speak to my heart. I need to be renewed. If I'm going to do this ministry well, I want to be sharp. I want to be on top of it. I want to be going in the right direction. So taking a spiritual renewal day. Now right away, it didn't take long before the guys started saying, can that be golfing? No, it can't be golfing. And for the gals, they said, can that be shopping? And I said, no, it can't be. You have to go, I said, to choose a park. Go to a park and just walk or sit. But just take your Bible and read it. And they said, some of them said it was the shortest 8 hours. They brought their sack lunches. For some of them, it was longer. It took forever. Just interesting. Spiritual Renewal Day. June on for me was this idea of looking back over the monthly challenges so far. But what I would tell you is it's a look back. Where did you find growth in the last year, 2 years, 3 years? When you look back and say, I remember when I was really doing things like I wanted to do them. Why were the things like that? It's always so important to take life experiences and not keep repeating the negative ones, but see how often we can repeat the positive ones. So this is just a good time to look back. And what I loved about meeting with people, like I said, only 1 or 2 were these, out of these 12 are ones that I came up with. Because when I meet with people, they have these great ideas, and I go, we don't have a platform to share them except for I could do it via email. So that's what I did. July, take an assessment and asking yourself, how are you doing at having a balanced life? That's that Luke 2:52. How am I doing spiritually? How am I doing physically? How am I doing mentally and emotionally? How am I doing socially? So how am I doing in those areas? Again, taking that assessment, which what I think is going to come up in a little bit that I think you're really going to like, is this whole idea of having others around us. So in August, we went right away into this idea of being involved. We call them life groups at our church. Some call them small groups. Some of them call them Bible studies, whatever you want to do. I think there's a men's group here. Why wouldn't you be involved in it? Why wouldn't you find ways to be involved in a caring group that you can learn from each other, that maybe you would even be vulnerable enough to be accountable to? Because that accountability is something that comes up in our next month of September. How many of you have I'm not going to ask you, accountability partners? I had to do that under Youth for Christ, so I've had one for 40 years. Thankfully, one of them's been the same, and we've added 2. Every Friday morning, the 4 of us get together. Now, there are times I wish I wouldn't have told them to ask me about how I'm doing with my weight, or how I'm doing dating my wife, or how I'm doing with my thought life, or how I'm doing with exercise. We talk about those things with each other, so at different times throughout the month, somebody will say, okay, let's do a checkup. How are we doing? And here's the thing. We promise each other starting out, no fudging, no lying, no pretending. You got to be honest. How are you doing? And that's sometimes the hardest, is to tell in front of people who know you best where you're failing. In November, I love this opportunity. How many of you were ever involved in scouting of any kind? Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts? Okay, a handful of you. Good. So I'm fortunate enough to have a good friend in Chuck Surek who owned Sweetwater Sound. And I met with him, and I went through this kind of stuff with him, and he loves what I'm doing. And I said, so Chuck, what is the grid that you kind of run through everything through? Now, I know his foundation, I love their mission statement is, do what's right. Wouldn't that would be simple if we could just always try to focus on doing what's right, do the right thing. So I said, so I love the simplicity behind that, Chuck. And he said, that's what I wanted it to be, it was simple. But I said, what do you kind of do every day, run a grid through? And he said, Scout Law. So he stated right then, like he says it every day to himself, he had memorized the Scout Law, and that's what he wanted to be about. I mean, there's a lot of very solid Christian values in that Scout Law. Look it up. I just think you'd find it very, very exciting. December, the last one that I wanted to share with you, that's where I share the Billy Graham, and it's just this whole idea of looking for opportunities wherever you are to have a spiritual conversation and to look at things with a more spiritual mindset. I've challenged myself as I want to end my career and however long I live, I want to have a mindset that it's not the last thing I do is think about spiritual things, but the first thing. When I'm talking to people who own businesses, often they find themselves and they go, okay, I'm having an issue. How does this affect the bottom line? How does this affect other relationships? How does this affect my leadership? Instead of, what does the Lord want me to do in this situation? When I met with Jason a couple months ago, he says, Mick, sorry, I'm a little distracted. I got to go back and let somebody go. And I said, okay, you got to let them go. Have you talked? Do they know it's coming? And he says, oh yeah, they agree they haven't been doing their job. And I said, the hardest part's over. Go back to them and say, now, since we know we're going to transition, how can I love you best in transition? Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Girls are so much better of saying, I love you, especially to other people and friends. Guys don't. Steve hates it when I tell him I love him all the time. He just rolls his eyes, and I just say I love him, and so once in a while he tears up. But anyhow, really loving other people is helping them not just through the easy things, but through the difficult things. And when you're working around people, now some of you might say, I don't work anymore. Well, in your community, there are people that suffer publicly. You know what they are. There's been illness, a death, whatever it might be. But do you know, and you got to know this, how many people around you are suffering silently? They're coming to work every day. They're coming to church. They're coming into your community gatherings. You see them out to eat, wherever it might be. They are suffering in silence because they don't feel the freedom that any place is really safe for me to share. That's difficult, but I know it's something that's so needed. So it may be time, I'm not big into New Year's resolutions, but to have a reset, a refresh, restart, refocus, shake it up, whatever you want to put into it, and say, I want to be transformed. Romans 12:2 says this, do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your, everybody wants to say faith a lot of times. It's mind. He gave us this wonderful thing, and he knows it conducts a lot of and directs a lot of the ways we go in life. So if we will do that, then it helps us to say, then we will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and purpose will. Again, notice, he didn't say faith, even though that's going to be a part of it, but it's a mindset, a total different mindset. As you look at these, I'm sure you may have said, I've heard sermons like this, and I may be motivated for a short while, but maybe it's the thing you need to do is to, on your way home, maybe before you leave, maybe sometime today or this week, you tell your spouse or a close friend, this guy with a broken arm got up in front of us and very, very poorly tried to share something that I think I need to do something about. And I would like to be better at this. Hold me accountable to exercising 3 days a week. Hold me accountable. I'm going to try to read a proverb a day. Help me, ask me about it. Would you do it with me? Any of those things that might help you get to the next place. So, what will it take for you to get unstuck? Do you need to be shocked? I remember when my son was 18 months old, I came home and Sharon said he woke up kind of from his nap. Not really, he's lethargic and not waking up. 18 months old, he had spinal meningitis. We went to the hospital, 3 days of being in a coma. I sat there every day, held his hand, just praying, and I'll be honest with you, I'm 25 years old, and I am just praying that Lord will give me a longer life with him, a chance to be his dad. It shocked me into being a stronger father. I was a playboy in that I'm a kid. I was doing campus life. I just wanted to continue high school because I love being a kid. I love socializing. I love laughing. I love having fun. But the Lord was telling me being a husband and father is your highest priority other than your relationship with me. On the third day when the doctor said we're going to bring him out of the coma, and I want you guys to be here, we had a hold of his hands, and his eyes slowly opened. And I said, Andy? I said, are you better? You want to go home and play ball? And he goes, ball? His first word out of a coma was ball. I love that because I love sports. And he loved it. And I held his hand so tight, we cried, and then 4 or 5 days later, he was able to come home, and he doesn't have a thing wrong with him. I think he does, but most people don't. Okay. So, I hope you'll do whatever it takes to get unstuck. And I will tell you this. Sometimes we can't get unstuck all by ourselves. If you're stuck out in a patch of snow, you may often need help to be pushed out. And you want to be able to do that. Let me pray, and Gerald's got a song for us. Lord, thank you for this group. Thank you for what this church is doing. I am in such awe to be able to have times periodically with Gary, and he shares just what the Lord's been doing here. And Lord, keep doing it. Keep refreshing these folks. Keep touching their hearts. Keep speaking to their hearts. Lord, help them have movement, especially with you. But if they also need to have movement in a relationship, help them to pursue that relationship. If they need to do something physically to be healthier, help them to do that. Lord, if they need some answer to some mental health issues, Lord, help them to get to that place. Lord, we love you, but more than anything, thank you for loving us. Amen.